Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. We're extremely happy to see you all here, and I'm extremely happy to be here. When I was in Vrindavan recently, I was speaking with a close friend of mine, Navina Nirada Prabhu, about the concept of the oasis. Oasis. Does everyone know what an oasis is? An oasis. A green area in the desert. Yes, there are famous oases in the world where miraculously in the middle of the desert there will be a source of water so that animals will come and live and breed and drink, and there will be green vegetation even in the midst of a very barren, extensively barren area in the middle of a desert. Topic of the oasis comes up in the prayers of Akrura, who laments when he's praying to Krishna that he's gone away from an oasis and into the desert searching for water. He was already there and he left it behind. It's the tendency of the fickle mind to always think that there'll be some happiness in another place. Also extending the idea of the oasis, that the process of Krishna consciousness, which is philosophically based and which is practical all at the same time. Practical in that one can create an oasis wherever one lives or wherever one travels. This material world is like a barren desert, in that the pervasive tendency of everyone in the material world is to forget Krishna, and this is the cause of all suffering. This is called avidya, or forgetfulness of oneself. If one forgets God, then one also forgets oneself. And because of this, people are suffering. And the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is to teach people, individually and collectively, how to create an oasis of Krishna consciousness in their lives, wherever they live. A home without Krishna, or a community without Krishna, or a state without Krishna, a country without Krishna, a world without Krishna is hell. Hell is actually a state of consciousness. Therefore, it's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Narayana paraksarvena kutaschana bhibyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitulyana darshanaha. That for a person who has practiced remembering Krishna, there is no heaven or hell. If that person is sent to hell, he won't perceive it as hell, because it's not an external circumstance that creates hell. It is one's own consciousness. Therefore, Navina Nirada Prabhu is saying that the process of Krishna consciousness means to create an oasis within one's own mind and heart. Means that in any moment one is practiced to take refuge in thoughts of Krishna, to remember Krishna. The easiest way is to repeat the names of Krishna. This was the very specific doctrine of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which follows the teachings of the Vedic scriptures, which say that in the age of Kali Yuga, the specific sacrifice for everyone is the chanting of God's names, repetition of God's names. In every age there is a particular sacrifice. In Satya Yuga, meditation was a recommended sacrifice. All of the processes are available, but in every age a particular sacrifice is particularly prevalent and potent. In the following yuga, and a yuga is a unit of time within the cycle of time in the universe. Just in a practical way, as we see that there is now fall is upon us, and then we can feel winter coming on. After winter will come spring, it always does. And after that comes summer. We can judge from the past what will happen in the future. These cycles continue, and there are larger cycles within the universe, larger periods of time, during which particular qualities are prevalent. And because of that, there are prescriptions how to stay connected to God, how to create that oasis in one's life. So in the age or the yuga called Satya Yuga, where goodness is prevalent, meditation was the prescribed process. Nowadays meditation is not so possible because there are quite a few disturbances in the environment wherever we go. There's never a moment of peace anywhere in the world. Mechanical contrivances, inventions, and people are overstimulated as well. And therefore, there's not an opportunity to sit down and simply meditate and contemplate for a long enough period of time to achieve what is mentioned in the Yoga Sutras, Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So Patanjali says in his first aphorism in the Yoga Sutra, Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The mind goes around and around and around and around and around and around and around, and it never stops. And actually, this perpetuates my sojourn in the material world from one body to the next. Because, of course, as my mind is formed in this world, so I form my external body. The mind is part of the subtle body. And as many of you know who are students of the Bhagavad Gita, Krsna says that there's a way that the mind becomes formed over a lifetime due to one's association and one's habits. We're very susceptible to our environment and to our association. And we'll develop a certain way of thinking. It's very difficult to get out of that pattern. Very difficult. People are brought up in a certain way. And not just in this life, but in previous lives also, there's a carryover from the ways in which I associated and the ways I practiced or I conducted my life in previous lives. That carries over in my subtle body to this life. So I'm born with certain proclivities, natural, samskars. I'm ruled by those actually, and a Jyotish can look at one's chart and say, yes, you're going into a major period of Saturn, and therefore this, it's not stereotyped. Everyone has there are different combinations and permutations for every single living being in this world, according to their association. No one's astrological chart is the same as another's, but there will be various circumstances because of the influence of the heavenly bodies. Really, it's a study of the three modes of material nature, how I'm affected. Therefore, that's reflected in the mind, and the mind's patterns and the way it moves. The chitta vritti, the consciousness, has certain habit patterns. And nirodha means to move beyond those habit patterns of the mind. In any case, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that these habit patterns of my mind will carry me to my next destination. Everyone would like to know, where am I going when I leave this body? Actually, the other day someone read me something, I think it's a bumper sticker that says, the body is a sexually transmitted disease that ends up in death. And once one has a body, then it's inevitable, Krishna says, that you'll give the body up. And what is the destination? It's dependent upon the formation of the mind. And therefore Krishna says, Yang vapi smaran bhavam tajatyante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kontaya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. That however your mind has been developed over this lifetime, when you leave the body, tajatyante kalevaram, you give up this present robot that you're inhabiting, your destination will be determined by the state of your mind. By the state of your mind. What is the prevalent feeling and focus of your mind, and what are the habit patterns of the mind? He also gives the example of the air passing over a particular area and carrying the odor of that area from one place to the next. So in a similar way, the consciousness, which is in contact with various circumstances in this life, will develop a particular quality, and that will carry it to the next destination. The next body will be perfectly accommodated in the next life according to that condition of our mind. So Krishna consciousness is prescribed process in the age of Kali Yuga through the chanting of Hare Krishna. Other prescribed methods in another age or yuga called Treta, there's a process of offering sacrifice of valuable items into the sacred fire, which is an offering to God. A tangible way that one can see God through the fire. He actually appears and consumes the items we give. And through this sacrifice, we attain a kind of perfection and connection with God in the Treta Yuga. In Dwapara Yuga, there's emphasis on the worshiping, the form of God within a temple, opulent worship of God. All the arrangement of building temples and adorning the deity in a certain way and attending to the form of the deity and so forth is prevalent in Dwapara Yuga. In Kali Yuga, these things are not possible. Extremely difficult in any case. People are not so much interested in building temples anymore. And even the artisans are not available who can build like they used to build. If you see some of the ancient temples or even churches and mosques around the world, you see a kind of artisanship that you won't see anywhere in this world. Nowadays, buildings are glass. It's just, let's build a beautiful building. What does it look like? It's a piece of glass sticking into the air. 150 stories, full of wires and metal frames and so forth. No carvings, no artisanship and so forth. In Montreal, Canada, there are so many beautiful stone churches that were built in bygone ages, and nowadays they're vacant. And the pews, which are all the seats where people used to sit to worship God in the temple, Hare Krishna, nice to see you, Radha, are being sold off for skateboard parks, as kids like to skate over them, and so forth. However, in the Kali Yuga age, the process of repeating God's names is particularly recommended and potent. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu put this forward as the main doctrine as a way in which people could develop this oasis-like atmosphere in their homes, in the cities, in their minds, in their hearts. One need only keep the vibration close. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Try it again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is a mantra. Man means mind, and tra is trayate, which means to deliver. Although there are many different kinds of mantras prescribed in the Vedas, this particular mantra, called the Maha Mantra, is a primary mantra, is the primary mantra taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as it brings one directly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the Gita, Krishna says that you have to work. He's telling Arjuna, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudyacha mayarpita manobudhir mami vaishyatya samshayaha. He said, therefore, because you have to work, he says to Arjuna, and everyone has their particular momentum in life, we have to work in a certain way. That's not a bad thing. You can't stop working. But he says, if you work, do your work in the world, nothing wrong with that, necessary, to maintain yourself, and at the same time, you remember me. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudyacha. He tells Arjuna, you can go on with your job of fighting, because Arjuna's a kshatriya, or a military person, and so he has to go and fight. So he said, you can fight the war, and at the same time remember me. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudyacha. At the same time you can remember me even while you're fighting. And he said, then if you do this, then without a doubt, then you'll come to me. And in the explanation of that verse, Srila Prabhupada, following the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, says that the best way to do this for every person who's working in this world, and everyone is, one way or the other, to chant Hare Krishna and at the same time work. So you do your work, but you also chant Hare Krishna. This can mean that every day you dedicate some time for the chanting of japa. Japa means that you can sit down or stand, either way, and generally on beads, where you can count how many mantras you're chanting. You can repeat the mantra and listen very carefully as a kind of prayer and meditation all in one. And in this way, remember the names of God. This is a particularly potent way in which to connect immediately to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he's fully present in the vibration of his name. It's said in the Bhakti scriptures, Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Binatvam Nama Namino. First of all, that the name of God, Nama Chintamani, is the name of Krishna, is transformational. This is the main way in which to come out of one's bad habit patterns. The bad habit patterns of the mind force me to do things that I wasn't planning on doing. That ever happened to anybody? Or is it just me? You plan to do one thing and you end up doing something else. Say, what am I doing over here? And even though you may say, your higher self may say, why don't you stop doing this? The mind says, no, we'll just keep doing it. And there's nothing you can do about it. I'll just go on doing this and you be quiet. The way to gain strength is to transform oneself through the association with the name of God. Nama Chintamani Krishna. This is a very reassuring verse that he's so close by and available. He means Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is available to anyone through his name and the Nama. I was recently in a very crowded area in Vrindavan, and someone was talking to me and had some important information, and then I got busy talking to someone else, and then the first person walked away, and I asked a devotee who was assisting me, did you get his name? He said, I didn't get his name. I said, then it's lost. We'll never find him again. And he said, I'll get his name, I'll get his name, I'll get his name. And he went to get his name. And we came back with the card. I got the card, I got his name. So he got his name. Now we've got something here. And you hold on to that card with his name on it because we want to get in touch. The name is something that's so intrinsically part of the person, especially when we're talking about Krishna. That's the meaning of this verse. Binat dvam nama namino. Phenomenally, or nominally, the way in which Krishna is actually completely the same as his name. Binat dvam nama namino. It's saying there's absolutely no difference. There's no connection. There's no division between Krishna and his name. You can be with him that way. And just by being with him in the name, Nama Chintamani Krishnas, the name is alive with Chintamani. It's transcendentally, Krishna's transcendentally present in his name. Chaitanya means alive. It's fully, all his activities, all his pastimes, everything about Krishna can be known through his name. Chaitanya Rasa. Rasa means this taste. And there's a way in which one can taste God. One can feel God's presence. One can experience something which is beyond what one normally feels in this world. And which, upon experiencing, gives one a perspective that I should practice more to overcome the lower self by the higher self. Sometimes people ask this question, how do I overcome the bad habit patterns that have developed in my mind and through which I'm overcome regularly? How do I overcome these? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the answer. He says, by regularly associating with the name of God. Because Nama Chintamani Krishnas. Krishna is fully alive, and you will be transformed practically magically. This is something you can take as a kind of mystical process. Chintamani is a stone, which I've not seen, but I've heard about, that when you touch it to other materials in this world, it transforms them into something valuable. So if you have stone, and you take a Chintamani stone and you touch the regular stone with it, the stone will turn into gold, some precious metal. So Nama Chintamani Krishnas, by contacting the name, then my mind will also be transformed into something valuable. And actually, I already am something valuable. It's just that I've forgotten and I'm identifying myself with the material body. Now, the first stage of spiritual life is to understand that I'm not the material physical body, or the subtle mental body either. This is such a big breakthrough. It cannot be overemphasized how big a breakthrough this is for the soul. And throughout the Bhakti scriptures, there are detailed instructions from various angles of seeing so that one can extricate oneself from this idea that I am the physical body. One of them comes in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, when Devaki and Vasudeva are first married, and they're on their way home. Who's driving the chariot for them? Kamsa, not a person you really want to have drive in your car. But it's a family thing, and you just can't get out of these family things, you know. Who's driving? Kamsa. Oh, no, not again. But that's the way of the material world. That's the way of the material world. We're all in some situation where Kamsa's hanging around, somebody's hanging around, and you just can't get out of it. But that's the way it was. And as they were driving home, destiny struck. And there was an unembodied voice from the sky which declared that, Kamsa, you're a fool because you don't know that the 8th child born from your sister is going to kill you. And Kamsa was a demon. Demon means one is selfish. Selfishness is demoniac. It's the opposite of the godly nature, which means to be a servant of God. This is the difference. And Kamsa, therefore, upon hearing that he would be killed by the 8th son of Devaki, and his entire concept of life was that I'm living to be happy in this world, and anything that gets in my way must be crushed. Therefore, he grabbed a hold of his sister's hair, drew his sword, if you can imagine this, on her wedding day, and was prepared to sever her head from her body. This is a very grotesque gesture, to say the least. And Vasudeva, newly married to Devaki, then was in the position of having to defend his wife. And he gave many valuable arguments to Kamsa why he should desist. He told him that this will not be very good for your reputation. He appealed to him on that level. It's very difficult for the demon to overcome the impulse to simply protect him or herself. And he also told Kamsa about the difference between the Atma, or the self, and the body. Because for normal people, when they hear about this, they get a different perspective in life. And they change their value system. So there's a particular verse I want to read to you that I find particularly potent, because the remembrance of this verse and the points that Vasudeva makes to Kamsa give one pause in keeping the body as the highest possession that we have. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Did you actually see it in here? 37? Okay, I'll just tell you about the verse because I don't see it here. And that is that there's a question about who actually owns the body. And perhaps it's not in this section. Maybe I'm mistaking it for another section. The question is, who owns the body? And do we own the body? Or there's a way in which when we die, who gets the body? Can you say? I know one sadhu in Vrindavan, for he has written in his will that he would like to be turtle food when the body dies. What would you like to have done with your body? He said, feed it to the turtles. If you throw a body into the Jamuna, there's gigantic turtles that will come, and they'll feast on the body for a half a day. And then the body will be transformed into turtle food. So in that case, your body belongs to the turtles. Or the body may belong to the fire, because some people burn the body. I think that is it the Jains? They place the body on a platform, let the vultures come? Those are Parsis. Zoroastrians. In any case, there are many different ways. If you put the body in the ground, then it becomes the property of the worms. And there are questions sometimes when people go into a coma, and who gets to decide whether the body's kept alive and so forth. I'll read the verse. Thank you. While alive, does this body belong to its employer, to the self, to the father, the mother, or the mother's father? Does it belong to the person who takes it away by force, to the slave master who purchases it, or to the sons who burn it in the fire? Or if the body is not burned, does it belong to the dogs that eat it? Among the many possible claimants, who is the rightful claimant? Not to ascertain this, but instead to maintain the body by sinful activities is not good. So this actually comes up in the story of the deliverance of the Yamala Arjun trees, and who were the sons of Kuvera, Nalakuvera Manigriva, who had become irresponsible and therefore were punished by Narada, but given the benediction that they would see Krishna. And they had fallen into the bodily conception of life. So this is a very sobering verse, which asks the question, who owns the body? Who does it actually belong to? And this is an important question to ask, because at any moment, the function of the body can be restricted without any prior notice. Or we can be forced to give up the body at any minute. Not just because of death, but the government may seize the body. Someone can be kidnapped at any time, especially nowadays. Anything can happen. In foreign countries, people get kidnapped all the time and say, okay, now it's ours. Now you can pay for it, you can have it back, otherwise we'll just destroy it and throw it away. And then you don't have anything to say about it. So the body doesn't really belong to us. And therefore, to stake all of one's energy in the body and to consider this is myself is a grave error. So by the process of Krishna consciousness, especially chanting the name of God, Lord Chaitanya says we gradually become detached from this bodily conception of life and come to a clear understanding that I'm something different from the body. And what is that something different? Actually, it's the Atma, the soul, who is a great hero. The soul is a great hero. Compared to everything else in this world, all of the material forms and elements that are in this world, the soul, one soul, it's part and parcel of Krishna, is unlimitedly more valuable than every other thing in this world, one soul. And the soul, being a part and parcel of Krishna and being part of the superior energy, is a great hero, is a famous person, actually. And this can be remembered by connecting to the Supreme Soul through the chanting of the name of that Supreme Soul. So, Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. One gets a taste, a higher taste, that I'm something extraordinary. And in that situation, there's a way in which all the other things that I thought were important in this world seem insignificant and comparatively. And those who have realized that will not give up their position in Krishna consciousness for anything. Mentioned in history the early Christian movement. Christians who became connected to the teachings of Christ were persecuted, as in many religious movements we see in the world. They start with a group who have had a transcendent experience and they're following one of the teachers of God or of God himself who's come to the world, and then that is not always appreciated in this world. So the early Christian movement was the same. There was a way in which Christians were persecuted and they had to hide and they would be killed. And in fact, they were given a choice many times. You give up this deviant philosophy or we'll kill you. And what was their choice? Well, go ahead and kill me, because it's more painful for me to give up my connection than it is to die. This is the power of the connection to the soul and to God, is this experience that I'd rather die than give that up. When the Bhagavatam says, ahaitu kiya pratiyata, it means unmotivated, uninterrupted service. It means that that's the only thing that can satisfy the self. It means when one has realized that, to even a small degree, the other aspects of this world become insignificant in comparison, and I won't give it up. Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father. Give up Krishna consciousness. Isn't that what his father wanted him to do? Would you just stop chanting? Would you just pay attention in school and get your MBA? I mean, that's all I'm asking. And he just wanted to chant Hare Krishna. And Prahlad was tortured, thrown off cliffs and so forth, but he never stopped. He never stopped chanting. It was more painful to give up Krishna consciousness than to be thrown off a cliff. Do you feel like that? Do you all feel like that? Yeah. You won't give it up. There's nothing that can stop you. There are many instances in the early goings of the Krishna consciousness movement. Some very interesting times, I must say. I mean, still are, but it was really interesting in the very beginning to have seen it from its inception practically, or been around those who were there from the very beginning, and then, I came a little bit in the middle, 1973. But still, so many fantastical things happen. I mean, the Hare Krishna devotees appeared on the scene as if transported from another planet, which is practically true. As Prabhupada used to say, oh, you look like you're from Vaikuntha. And other people didn't know where Vaikuntha was, but they just knew we weren't from this planet. And that doesn't go well normally. People like, how come you're not wearing what I'm wearing? How come you don't do what I do? Why are you doing that instead of this? Why don't you get a job? That was something we heard a lot. So we were fully dedicated to going out and teaching the name and distributing books and so forth. I think I heard maybe tens of thousands of times growing up, as going out on book distribution, people would say, why don't you get a job? And we used to discuss amongst ourselves, well, what kind of job what kind of jobs are there out there? Because I really didn't have that much of an idea. And someone would say, maybe a cigarette factory. Or my friend Ruchi used to say, yeah, maybe we could get a job putting the stripes in toothpaste. They used to have toothpaste that had little stripes in it. It's like, yeah, that would be an interesting job. So why don't you get a job? There's a persecution that goes on, and that there was a movement by many parents who saw their children join the Krishna consciousness movement, and they thought, they've given up all our standard values. No eating of meat, you're going to die from that. And this perpetual chanting God's name and total dedication to God. I mean, we raised you to appreciate God a little bit, but this is ridiculous. I mean, even in India, we hear the story of Raghunath Das Goswami, who was from a very pious Hindu family. And when he said, I just want to join Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they said, a little bit's okay, but this is ridiculous. And he came from a billionaire family. Giriraj Maharaj came from a multimillionaire family. And his parents, were aghast. They had sent him to prep school and, really good university, and he's, extremely bright, obviously, and, great hope for him. And then it's like, you're going to do what? And they offered him, how about we'll just get a trust fund set up for you, a couple $1 million, and then you just come home. And you can still do a little, Hare Krishna, but, no thank you. Where was he living? In Bombay? And the most dire circumstances, the Bombay project, I saw it before it was built up into Juhu, Hare Krishna land. It was very austere circumstances. And here he is from a multi-million-dollar family. Please come back. Here's your trust fund. No, thank you. No, I'm not interested. And there were families who would send out what were called deprogrammers, because they figured this must be some temporary state of consciousness that people have, my son or daughter has been coerced into. Otherwise, who would give up in their right mind eating meat, watching television, and all these extremely ecstatic activities? I mean, how could one live without them? And so the deprogrammers would hire them, and then they would catch the son or daughter unawares walking down the street, throw them into a van. Yeah, this happened all the time. Drive them to a safe house where they would nail down the windows shut, and they'd tie them up. And then they would just talk to them and try to convince them to give up Krishna consciousness. And as after a while, say, okay, all right. And then the moment that they stepped out the door, they'd run down the street, get on the bus, and they'd show up at the temple. Where you been? Where were you the last week? They tried to get me. They tried to deprogram me. Many devotees, you can see today, many devotees that were deprogrammed because it seemed like the most insane thing you could do, which would give your life to God. But why did they come running back? Not because they were brainwashed, but because they had experienced a higher taste. So there's something in this process that is tested, that when one's tasted it, one wants it. So that comes from the name. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. There's a taste. And one can experience the real form of God in one's life. It means that one can feel his embrace and the way in which he's moving one's life by this connection. And having experienced that, one doesn't want to give it up. Even in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 5th canto, we were reading that a little bit when we were in Vrindavan. There's a verse by Narada Muni who says that sometimes, somehow or other, one who is taken to Krishna consciousness falls down, somehow or other. Because the habit patterns in the mind are so strong, someone may take up Krishna consciousness and later on become bewildered. Because of the force of bad past habits, they may fall down. But he says they won't experience the world the way everybody else does because they've already tasted something higher. And therefore, they always remember, their mind keeps coming back to the experience they had in Krishna consciousness, and eventually they come back to that. They can't forget it. So, this chanting gives one that experience that one can't forget. Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Purna means that it's perfect. And nothing's perfect in this world. There's always something wrong with whatever we do here. You can buy something, you can work for something, and it's never what you thought it was going to be. It's never completely perfect. Have you experienced that, or is it just me? There's always something that goes along with it that you weren't expecting. And it's not perfect. No matter what arrangements we make in this world, there's always some, what we call complications. I hate that word, especially if you go to a hospital. There's some complications. In other words, you're going to kill me, right? I came in here for a simple thing, and what you're trying to tell me in medical language is, I'm going to die now, right? Yeah, there's some complications. There's always complications in the material world, no matter what you do. No matter how well educated somebody is, and no matter how good their intention is in taking care of you or giving you something that is supposedly the best thing, there's always complications. One way or another, it always goes sideways. And it leaves an incomplete feeling in one's life. But not the name. But not the name. This is the one place you can go. This is your oasis. This is the place you can find actual satisfaction in a world where everything's at loose ends, where everything doesn't quite fit the way you thought it was going to fit, where the person you thought was your best friend turns out that had some ulterior motive. Everything always goes sideways, but not the name. Purna. It's completely perfect. The relationship with the name is completely perfect, and the experience of the name is completely perfect. It's not like anything else in this world that we've ever experienced. Purna Shuddha. Shuddha means that it's pure and it's purifying. To hear the name, to be connected to the name of God, one's consciousness becomes naturally purified. And when there's purification, there's satisfaction. Because only due to impurities, the impurities of the mind, the cartload of desires that I carry around, useless desires, unnecessary wants and needs, am I full of anxiety? And do I feel dissatisfaction? But the purification, Lord Chaitanya says, will reveal my higher self, the heroic self that I really am as part and parcel of Krishna. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shravanari Shuddhachitte Kare Udhai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu invoked this verse saying that there's a relationship we have with the Supreme, with God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And I'm covered over, I've forgotten it, I'm distracted from that relationship. I'm absorbed in something else that's not Krishna, therefore I'm full of anxiety. I'm carrying around a cartload of unnecessary and unwanted desires. But Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shravanadi Shuddhachitte Karu Udoy. By connecting oneself with the name of God and the sound vibration of the Srimad Bhagavatam, then that cartload of unlimited desires that I'm carrying around as a burden will be taken away. The coverings that prevent me from actually experiencing my higher self will be purified, will be lifted. And then one can experience one's higher self. So, through the name, through chanting Krishna's name, Purna Shuddho, one becomes purified, Nitya Mukto, and the name itself is eternally liberated. Now, the soul The Atma and God, who is the Paramatma. This distinction is very important. And in fact, it's said in the Shastra, Madhvacharya brings out a couple of verses from the Padma Purana that says that anyone who clearly makes the distinction between the Atma and the Paramatma is very dear to the Lord. Not many people do. Through mental speculation, they come to the conclusion that I'm God. But that's an erroneous conclusion because we're controlled by the modes of material nature. We're forced to take one body after another. But Krishna is not in that position. He's in an unassailable condition eternally. And therefore he says in the Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvata. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti sorjana. That if you just remember the transcendental nature of my birth and my activities in this world, you'll become liberated. That's the power of Krishna consciousness. Krishna is in ever liberated situation, and if you simply remember Krishna, then you'll also be liberated. And when you leave the body, you'll not be obligated to take another material body. So Krishna is Nityamukto, and he's also mentioned as the maintainer of all other living entities. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yovididhati Kaman. There's a difference between the Atma and the Paramatma. And here's the difference that can be experienced every day. Anybody here have lunch today? Yes or yes? Yes. Thank you very much. That when you finish lunch, you can say, Krishna, thank you for feeding me once again. Because Krishna's the feeder and I'm the fed. All the grains, all the tomato sauce, all the rice, all the dal, all the spices, it's all Krishna. It's all coming from him. He says in the Gita, Punyo Gandha Prativyam Cha, I'm the fragrance of the earth. That's where that taste comes from. One goes crazy. We would go crazy if we didn't have it either, right? If someone said, no more spices for you the rest of the week, what to speak of. No, 1 month, no spices. No salt, no turmeric, no pepper. You're squirming already, right? In fact, pepper used to be as expensive as gold because it's so valuable. There were people like Marco Polo, he was trying to find the East because they heard there were spices there. You bring back a load of spices, you sell it on the market, it was like gold, you become a millionaire. Columbus was apparently looking for India when he ran into, Florida or wherever he landed. And why? Because there were spices there. Where do those spices come from? It's all Krishna. He is the spice of life, and he is the food that we eat, the grains and the fruits. All these things come from Krishna. So Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam, he's the feeder, I'm the fed. And just this understanding that God is feeding me, and I'm fully dependent on him, this gives great satisfaction. So one can realize this through the name. Purna Shuddho Nityamukto. One realizes that the name is liberated. It's not bound by the laws of nature like my mind is. It's transcendental to the modes of material nature. Binadvam Nama Namino. Reminding us again, no difference at all between Krishna's name and Krishna himself. So this is a very practical philosophy that we're taking up and we're teaching to people all over the world, that you could create an oasis in the desert. This material world is like a desert where everyone's forgotten Krishna, but if you simply connect to the name of God. Now this particular mantra is recommended, the Maha Mantra. It's got special powers, a mystical mantra that can allure the mind away from the lower aspects of material nature and bring one to the spiritual world just by hearing the mantra. That's how powerful it is. So the mantra is 16 words and 32 syllables. And it goes like this: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that mantra can be repeated with one's tongue, just so one can hear. In the early hours of the morning, it's especially beneficial to carve out some time to sit down and listen to yourself say the name in a prayerful way. It's written in the form of a prayer. They say in the vocative form, which means you're just expressing, oh my Lord, oh my Lord, oh my Lord. Don't you need to say that? People say it all the time. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It's a mantra you'll hear everywhere you go, and on the internet people would, OMG, 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 OMG. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So now do it authorized in a way that's very specifically prescribed. Everyone wants to say, oh my God. As soon as you see something, either you see any kind of rasa, you see a horrible thing, oh my God. You see something wonderful, you won the lottery, oh my God. So this is natural. Everyone says, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So just this is done in a very specific authorized way. You can say, oh my God, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then he started this called Sankirtan, which means congregational chanting. Now the congregational chanting means that everyone comes together and they sing the name out loud so that others can hear the name. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very specifically organized his Sankirtan parties so that people would be attracted, so it would be very effective. Sometimes devotees think, well, it doesn't matter how we present ourselves when we go out to chant Hare Krishna in public because the name is so powerful it will make up for everything. Maybe, but the fact is that people take a look, and we want to deliver in the nicest possible way we can so that they'll take a closer look and appreciate. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did that. He would, ahead of time, organize his team members. He said, okay, Avaitacharya, Haridas Thakur, you're going to dance. You be the dancers. And then he would have singers. And then some were playing on the kol, the madanga, and others would be playing on the kartals. And then there were gongs. And he would organize the party. They would choreograph the chanting ahead of time so that when they go out in public, they would have a very powerful effect, the chanting Hare Krishna. Now, besides this chanting of Hare Krishna, which is the primary means for deliverance in the age of Kali, there's also what is called literary kirtan. Literary kirtan. This means that the vibration of the spiritual world gets written down in books. And we take books for granted nowadays, don't we? Do you have a lot of books at home? You don't even pay attention to them? Sometimes even people get the Srimad Bhagavatam and they'll put it in their house, and then 10 years later you can come there, and if you open it, you'll hear this little cracking sound because it hasn't been opened yet, or the plastic's still on it. There's a way in which our lives are so busy, or I just think, oh, it's just another book, or so forth. But actually, the books, the bhakti scriptures, are written kirtan. And this is a kind of kirtan that is especially powerful in this age of Kali Yuga, because the kirtan, the chanting with drums and cymbals, it can be heard for a few blocks. If you go down to Market and Powell in San Francisco, because of the loud noises down there, everyone's got something to say downtown. Living entities everywhere have something to say. If you go to the jungle, it's the same thing. Every living entity has some little sound they make, and they think it's really nice. And they're all out there making it. I was in Govardhan in the morning. I'd sit up on the very top of the ashram so I could see Govardhan Hill because the trees have grown up so high. And then I was at the top of the tree level so I could watch all the birds also. And so many different kinds of birds. And they all had their own little shtick. They all had some little thing that they would do and say. And then I was noticing all the animals, all the humans, they all have some noise they make. Everyone's got to make a little expression. And everyone thinks it's very nice, too. Prabhupada mentions that when the donkey brays, it's a very unusually discordant sound, but the donkey thinks this is really cool. Everyone thinks it's very nice. Now I forgot the track I was on. Where was I? Yeah, literary kirtan. So to bring literary kirtan means to expand the vibration of the spiritual world, and in ways that penetrate. Now, Prabhupada mentions this many times. As his movement was unfolding in the early days, he would send out devotees to chant all days on the street. There were no real principles at that time, no regulated life. He didn't introduce that at first. There was no morning program. There was no evening program. They were just go out and chant all day long on the street, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And young devotees, they can go out and chant for 12 hours a day, and they'll come back a little hungry, but ready to go the next day. And go like that for decades, actually. And the devotees did that for years. And then books began to come out. Prabhupada was spending his time writing books. He would wake up early in the morning, actually, we could say late at night, just around midnight. This is a good time to write from midnight onward, because during those hours, people won't call you generally, unless they're in a different time zone. And he'd take that time when there were no other issues to deal with, simply to write his books. And it was based on the order he got from his spiritual master, that this is called the Brihat Kirtan. The books are the greater kirtan. They're a louder kirtan. Why does that? Because they penetrate places that the other kirtan can't. And Prabhupada noted early on that some of the devotees distributed some of the transcendental books to the son and daughter of the president at the time. And they took them into the White House. And Prabhupada said, we couldn't have gone in the White House to chant with the Hare Krishna mantra. But the books went in, and now they're chanting inside the White House. So he gave this as an example of how the books can penetrate areas, and the books will stay around with this current kind of paper that we're using for about 500 years. And they get passed from one generation to the next. A lot happens in 10 years, what to speak of 100 years, how the world changes, right? And when these kinds of books are around, they have a profound effect on human society. So there was a strategy that Prabhupada had for this literary kirtan, that his spiritual master had told him, if you ever get money, what did he say? Yeah, print books. So Prabhupada came and he said, I didn't come here to build temples. My main object was to print books and distribute them widely so that people could read them and take up the process of Krishna consciousness. And so he emphasized this, and he first, before coming to America, came out with the Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, he came out with the Easy Journey to Other Planets. I heard some of you distributed that over at NASA recently. I thought that was brilliant. And he also wrote the first 3 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he brought those over with him in trunks. Traveling is difficult, especially when you're carrying a lot of things. And he probably took the trouble to bring those books with him. That was his main ammunition. And to what he was going to distribute. He could have just come over and chanted, right? But he wanted the books also. So he brought over 200 sets of these Srimad Bhagavatams that he had personally given commentary to and translated. We have those. They're available now, and much more. So he brought those, and then he continued writing, and then he came out with his Bhagavad Gita, which was released early on in about 1968. And then there were different versions of it. In 1972, Macmillan Company agreed to print Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. And then there were other books that came out regularly, and then Prabhupada started emphasizing the distribution of his books, that you should read them and distribute them as widely as possible. So in a famous talk that he gave in Los Angeles, he said, print as many books in as many languages and distribute throughout the whole world. As many books in as many languages. And very interesting in that speech, he quoted the verse that was taught by Ishvara Puri, the spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to his disciple, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at the time of his initiation. He gave him this very famous verse, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalauna Stevana Stevana Steva Gatiranyata. Which means, there's no other way, there's no other way, there's no other way than chanting the holy names, chanting the holy names, chanting the holy names of the Lord. Why is it given 3 times? Any mothers in here with kids? Yes, do you ever tell your kid 3 times something? Don't go in the pantry, don't go in the pantry, don't go in the pantry. Yeah, it's like that. It's for emphasis. I told you 3 times, now don't go in there. Don't even look in there. So the Shastra does that too, makes this emphasis. In the talk, Prabhupada quoted this verse to emphasize this focus on this chanting the holy name. This is from one of the famous bhakti scriptures called the Brihat Narhadiya Purana, which advocates that if you simply chant the holy name, the holy name, the holy name, you'll attain perfection in life. So don't look anywhere else. Just concentrate on this. And then Prabhupada, as a parallel, when he was talking about book distribution, he said, so I am asking you to print as many books in as many languages and distribute throughout the whole world. He's saying, therefore, I am asking, where is book? Where is book? Where is book? And he said that 3 times in parallel with the other verse, Harinama Eva Kevalam. There's no other way, there's no other way. He was emphasizing the importance of the literary kirtan. That by carrying the vibration of the Bhagavad Gita and placing it strategically all over Silicon Valley and beyond, perhaps maybe even Lebanon. How about Lebanon? Could we distribute books, Bhagavad Gita books in Lebanon? What do you think? Yes or yes? Yes. Can we distribute Bhagavad Gita books in Lebanon? Yes. Has it been done yet? Yes. We're in process. I heard recently that Mayapur, Bihari Prabhu and his intrepid team traveled to the East Coast, taking orders for the Bhagavad Gita as it is to be placed in motels and hotels. Met people from Lebanon who have hotels there. Am I correct about that? And they would like to place Bhagavad Gitas in those motels? They've taken orders. They've given orders for putting Bhagavad Gitas there. Any other exotic places? The Caribbean? Caracas. Yeah. Now just imagine you're in Lebanon, you check into a hotel. You open the drawer, and what do you see? And what else? The Gideon's Bible. I don't imagine, I don't know if the Gideons have made it. They're all over the world. There's a reason for that. People, living entities, are searching for knowledge. They're looking in every corner of the world, trying to find a little bit of knowledge that will give them some satisfaction. That's why if you get on any bus or airplane, any public place, you'll notice everyone's looking at something. They have even a newspaper open or an iPad or something, they're reading it. Why? They want to find some knowledge that will give them satisfaction. Narada Muni says in his teachings to Vyasadeva, who is his disciple, he said, anything, and now he's criticizing Vyasadeva for writing the Vedas, if you can imagine that. Now compare that to the New York Times or any other. He says, anything you desire to describe that is separate in vision for the Lord will simply disturb the mind with different names, forms, and results, just like a boat on the water that has no resting place. It's blown by the wind. So everything people are reading all over the world, definitely the 24-hour news cycle, there's not enough news to actually tell everybody, so people have to make stuff up. And they have to think of things and sensationalize it so someone will say, oh my God, I got to read more, because it'll stimulate their mind in a destructive way, but nonetheless, it stimulates their mind. What are they actually looking for? Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the direct words of Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if you simply read the Bhagavad Gita, just the verses, you'll feel satisfied. This is the secret to life. If you start off your day by reading a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita and chanting Hare Krishna, even a little bit, you'll be satisfied the rest of the day. You'll know what to say. You'll know what to do. You'll know also what not to do. You won't get in trouble. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti madhava. I'm giving you some direct instructions here. If you follow them, you won't have any problems in life. He says, if you ignore them, then you'll have all kinds of problems. Which one would you like? A, no problems. B, all kinds of problems. Let's vote. A, B. Okay, it's settled. So this is the greatest kind of welfare work in the world. If you feed somebody, then they'll be hungry the next day, looking for more food. If you build a hospital and you fix somebody's toe that's broken, they'll go out and break something else. Or there'll be complications, and they'll sue you for trying to take care of them. But if you distribute transcendental knowledge, this is known as parupakar. It's the greatest welfare work that you can possibly do in this world for every living entity who is actually part of the spiritual world, to have them come in contact with Bhagavad Gita. Bar none. There is no greater kindness that you can show to another living entity other than giving them Bhagavad Gita and the holy name. No greater kindness. And there's no greater ecological work that you can do in the world. The world is being destroyed piece by piece by overzealous developers. And everyone wants to live like a king. Do you know people who live in San Jose, Mountain View, where else is there around here? Sunnyvale, Palo Alto for sure. Yeah, where else? Cupertino for sure. Where else? Milpitas, yes. Santa Clara. Did you know the house that you all live in is a better standard of living than kings lived in hundreds and thousands of years ago? Everybody wants to live like a king. And everyone pretty much in the West does live like a king. Unless you're sleeping on the footpath. But if you live in a house and you have air conditioning and a soft bed to live on, and a little porch with a tree in the front yard, that's a palace. That is a palace on this earth. And everyone wants that. Therefore, there's this unsustainable onslaught of development all over the world, and so many other things to support that kind of lifestyle. How to adjust for that? How to reclaim the God's green earth and bring it up to a livable standard where the air's not polluted, the water's not polluted. It can only be done by education and knowledge. If you distribute Bhagavad Gita and people read it and they adjust their lifestyle, there's a way in which you're doing the greatest ecological work. It's the greatest humanitarian work. because those who read Bhagavad Gita understand what a learned person is. Vidya vinaya sampane brahmane gavihastani shuni chaiva supakecha pandita samadarshina. That treating everyone with respect is actually the hallmark of an educated person. And the divine qualities are described in the Bhagavad Gita. What are the divine qualities? Just by hearing about them, you'll feel satisfaction. If you just read the list of divine qualities. And anyone, anywhere, who picks up Bhagavad Gita and reads it, even a little bit, will feel complete satisfaction. So, at this time of year, devotees all over the world are turning their attention to the mass distribution of the Bhagavad Gita, because it's the most important work that one can do, and it is the greatest contribution of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, introducing the Bhagavad Gita as it is to as many people as possible all over the world. It is the most important investment that one can make, and in time, in money, people want to know what to do with all my money. I have so much money, I don't know what to do with it. Everyone's thinking, right? Yes or yes? Come on, say yes. Don't worry. Yes. I don't know. I have so much money, I don't know what to do with it. I'm asking investment advisors, where am I going to put it all so it won't be taxed and it'll grow into 2 million more than it is now in a few years and so forth. What is the best investment? Invest in Bhagavad Gita. Distribute Bhagavad Gita. That's an eternal asset. Just like building a temple. If you build a temple for Vishnu, that's an eternal asset. If you distribute Bhagavad Gitas for Krishna, you're his greatest servant. You're his most dear servant. He says it himself in the Bhagavad Gita. There's no servant in this world more dear to me than he. If you ask a child, what is your favorite food? And the child said, there is no food more dear to me in this world than pizza. That's the favorite food. Krishna says, there is no servant in this world more dear to me, nor will there ever be one more dear. And the child says, pizza, and never will there ever be a food more dear to me than pizza in this world. And Krishna says, never has there been a servant more dear to me than the one who distributes Bhagavad Gita, nor will there ever be one more dear to me than the person who distributes Bhagavad Gita. These are the words of Bhagavan. For those who believe that these are the words of Bhagavan, that is the most important investment. All other investments will leak out through the cracks, will be stolen. Uncle Harry will call and say, I need an operation. You're the richest one in the family. You got to pay for it. And you didn't expect that. You thought Uncle Harry was going to live forever. But Uncle Harry's going to call you and say, I need the money, and you're the only one, and because you're my relative, my nearest and dearest, you got to give me the money. And you know what? You got to hand it over. And you know what? It's just gone. You don't get to keep it. But if you invest in Bhagavad Gita, then it's eternal. Your eternal credit. Therefore, our temple from the very beginning, our community has been based on this principle. From the very beginning, when we formed this community, we said, we will build this based on this principle of parupakar. First and foremost, we want to see that we're giving this knowledge to as many people as possible. It's authorized. It's authorized by Srila Vyasadeva, by Narada Muni, by Srila Prabhupada, who specifically said, if you ever get money, print books. Where is book? Where is book? Where is book? And so forth. So we concentrate on this, knowing that come what may in this life, we are doing something which is intrinsically so good for ourselves and for others that we have an asset which is eternally with us and which can never be taken away. So this principle of chanting Hare Krishna and reading and distributing the Bhagavad Gita to as many people as possible, giving the holy names to others, is a very simple process, but it's extremely profound. It allows any person, even if they're working in this world in very difficult circumstances, having to go to work, come back from work, it connects every one of us directly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and brings the highest results of spiritual life that can be attained in any age by the mercy and grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And now, if you have any reflections or questions, and also, I just want to say that I heard there's going to be a skit tonight. But all the players who are going to be in the skit must be practicing, because I saw them stealthily sneak out of the room, and I think they're getting ready to show us a skit, which will be illustrative of this spiritual process of distributing Bhagavad Gita. Reflections, anything that you heard that stuck in your mind, or a question? Shri Kumar Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for this wonderful session. I have a question basically. So it's, if a person is only continuously engaged in chanting, like basically when we are talking about the holy names, so if they are only engaged in kirtan for a prolonged amount of time, would that be just enough for their transformation, or something else is still needed?
No, only chanting is needed. There are 64 processes of devotional service. Of these 64 processes, 5 are particularly prominent. In the process of 5, the holy name is one, and amongst the 5 processes, the chanting of the holy name is all-inclusive. Therefore, it's the be-all and end-all of all the processes, the chanting of Hare Krishna. So yes, you may chant constantly and attain perfection. Is that what your intention is? Yeah, you can do that. There's also variety in spiritual life. There are other activities that one can perform. Haridas Thakur chanted constantly. He chanted 64 rounds times 3 every day. And he didn't have time for anything else, practically. Even when a prostitute came to him because the local magistrate wanted to defame him and tried to set him up by sending a prostitute. The prostitute came in the middle of the night when he was chanting. He said, "Yes, I will satisfy you, but only after I finish my chanting. You please sit down and wait." And she came back 3 days in a row, and he said the same thing. And then, because she heard the chanting and started imitating it, she also became a devotee and became a disciple. So we should constantly chant Hare Krishna. When we start in the day, we chant a fixed number of rounds just to get us started. Someone once asked Prabhupada, can we chant more than 16 rounds? Prabhupada said, you can chant 16,000 if you're capable. But generally, most people can't just sit down and chant Hare Krishna. They also require some variety in their life, like worshiping the deity and going out to distribute Krishna consciousness. In fact, it's a more complete process given to us by Prabhupada, this mood of going out and teaching others to chant Hare Krishna along with our process. Of course, even Haridas Thakur did that because he went door to door. Anybody here go door to door? Yes. How many go door to door to teach people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 15, 27, 36. Everybody practically. Yeah, there's no more interesting work than going door to door to introduce the transcendental literatures and give people prasadam and just be ambassadors of goodwill. There's no more fun that you can have in this world. Honestly, there's no more fun that you can have in this world because it's very fulfilling work, because you're actually doing something which is true and good and which actually benefits people to the highest degree. Very satisfying work. If you can get it, get it. If you can join the Sankirtan party, do so as soon as possible. Just go around door to door. What else? Other reflections? Mukharavind.
Thank you, Maharaj. Our life is back in ISV for coming by. I like the point that when you make that when one's understand our connection with soul, then you are ready to do anything. And you given very nice example of Prahlad Maharaj, how he was, or even the earlier Christian, those who got persecuted, is very instructive to know that yes, this is my life, and to realize that at one point of the time, or as soon as possible.
See something most valuable. Damodar, are they getting ready for a skit? Maybe I could get that information, because they said maybe they would present it now or a little bit later. Do you all want to see a skit? Yes. Yes, Gandharvika?
I like the point where you said holy name is the breakthrough, because sometimes people take to drugs and all those things when they are depressed, and the world is full of that. But hearing that the holy name transforms the mind from the lower self to the higher self gives a tremendous hope for a conditioned soul. And I think going out and giving it to people, I think is the greatest welfare work that gives happiness to us.
Yeah, it's important work to do for oneself when bad habit patterns come up in one's life. I was just listening to the Yoga Sutra recently. It's mentioned there that in the moment when one tries to do the right thing and to overcome those bad habit patterns by instead engaging in a transcendental activity like chanting, in that moment you make great progress. Don't think that just because you're being challenged by the mind and senses, and it's difficult for everyone, that you're not making progress. You are. Every inch, every moment that you dedicate to taking the spiritual path over the urges of the senses is inestimable progress, and will be something that you can bank on for many, many lifetimes. So always try. And the process is so practical and so close by that once you get in the habit of it, then like Haridas Thakur, when urges come calling, and they will, because there's so many stored up and they'll be delivered at various times, you can say, fine, I know who you are, I know what you want, but you're going to have to wait. You wait till later. Yes?
So the skit is then after Aarti.
After Aarti, okay.
I like the point you made about that, how, Raghunath Das Goswami's parents were saying, do a little bit, or don't just get involved completely.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that, in contrary, we've been given opportunity and all the instructions by our Guru Parampara and the Vaishnavas Association, but we do it conditionally. So, okay, Krishna, I love you for A, B, C, D, or I can only chant 16 rounds. I cannot just non-stop, I can chant. Same thing with association. We love our devotee friends for certain things. We conditionally love them. We don't just love each other unconditionally. Similarly, we have a hard time also giving up everything and just completely surrender to Krishna. So that's why we are suffering from the condition. And Raghunath Goswami here, he's been allowed to just do very little in the beginning, and he's just loving it so conditionally. So it struck me.
Everything by degrees, by slow degrees. It's unusual if someone suddenly takes to Krishna consciousness full time. And even sometimes you'll see that people do, and then they retreat, and then take up the level that they can handle at a certain point. So no one should feel discouraged. Everyone should feel encouraged that at every level there's encouragement for taking to devotional service and the process at the level that you can handle and continue forward. And that is all that one can do, is take up where you are. Conditional devotional service, mixed devotional service means that there's pure devotional service in it. Otherwise, what's it mixed with, right? Yes.
Hare Krishna. I like the part where you shared the reflections from the past when the movement started, and how eminent stalwarts like Giriraj Swami, how he refused such a lucrative offer from his parents, and then he stuck to the movement and showed his dedication to the movement. So that is very inspiring.
Yeah, and Prabhupada noted as well that in such an affluent country as America, there were a lot of young people who rejected it anyway, even before they met Krishna, came to Krishna consciousness, as an indication that it's not in and of itself satisfactory to the self. It doesn't satisfy the self just being surrounded by wealth and affluence. In fact, there's a disease called affluenza that some people get. It was used as a legal defense by a young man who was born in a very wealthy family and then wantonly went around and ran people over and killed them. And when they took him to court, he said, I was raised, in a very wealthy family and I don't know any better. That was the defense. I'm so affluent, I'm desensitized to the rest of the world. A lot of young people in the 60s had rejected the status quo. Even though it was a time of economic growth, there was so much wealth coming into the society and so forth, and the hippie movement and so many other counterculture movements, they just said, not that, something else. They didn't know what the other thing was, though. They didn't know what it was. But this is, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches, Bhoga Tyag. It's a nature in this world that Bhoga, I want satisfaction from material enjoyment, and once I get it, I say, nah, I don't want that, I'm giving it up now. And then you go to the other extreme, which is Tyag, I'll give it up. So always fluctuating between Bhoga and Tyaga, enjoyment and then renunciation. But neither of those can satisfy. But if one has a life of dedication in devotional service, then one can actually feel satisfaction. Yes. Oh, yes.
Couple of thoughts, Maharaj. One is that I'm echoing what Mukharvinda said. We are so happy to have you back here. It has been, now the OSs, we can see the OSs at ISKCON. A couple of thoughts. One of them was that you made the observation that everybody around us is reading and they're trying to find some happiness and they're actually looking for the Bhagavad Gita. And which is a very good thought to keep in mind when we're out doing book distribution, because sometimes we hesitate whether we should present the book or not. But if we have this conviction in our mind that the soul is actually looking for the Bhagavad Gita, it'll become much more easy to do that. And along the same lines, we were doing some book distribution today, and we met this young couple. And the wife said that she has read the Bhagavad Gita two times already. And then her aunt stopped her and said, no, you should not read it more because you'll become a sannyasin and all that, and you should get married, and And that had such a profound effect on her that she's here, she's married, and her husband wants her to do some deity worship, and she refuses to do. So anyway, I was happy just giving her a Bhagavad Gita, and she gave some donations, but then Mukharvinda jumped in and said, she needs a Srimad Bhagavatam, and we gave that to her as well, and she was very happy. We chanted something like that. So again, like what Prabhupada said, distribute books, distribute books, distribute books. It's amazing.
It's also interesting to hear these accounts when devotees go out to give knowledge to others, how complicated people's lives are. You meet people with so many circumstances that are difficult, circumstances in which to practice Krishna consciousness. Everyone has some complexity in their life, not the least of which is people telling them what they should do. And everyone is guiding people in a certain way. Don't do this, don't do that. Do it this way, don't do it that way. You're obligated here and there. And it takes a great effort to actually come out of the material world and give concentration to one's spiritual life, because there's so many other obligations. But it's altogether possible with a methodical approach and taking help from Krishna at every step. He's there within the heart, and he knows the level of sincerity and desire of any given living entity, and will help in all kinds of circumstances. Thank you for bringing those. Now, I just have a question about what to do now, because we'd like to start the Artik right on time, right, at 6 o'clock? And is that correct? Yes. Yeah. And also, right after this, there's a skit that the devotees have been preparing. So you want to see the skit, so we will leave enough time for that. And also, just wonder if those anyone here has taken up a home practice of chanting the Maha Mantra on beads? Anybody here is practicing a little bit at home? Yeah, Vrindavan? Are you practicing at home? Can you tell us what you do? What's your practice like, your chanting at home? Hold the mic a little closer.
I close my eyes and
Go ahead, tell us.
I close my eyes and think about Krishna,
And then what?
and then I say the mantra
Which mantra?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
And how does that feel?
Nice.
You like it? Do you sit in one place? Can you tell us any other tips about what you do?
I sit in one place.
You sit in one place? Like this? Like this? You sit up like that? Okay.
The beads.
You chant on beads?
I chant on beads.
Okay. And do you recommend the process?
Yeah.
Okay. How old are you?
7
7 years old.
and a
Okay.
half.
Anybody else who has a home practice? Yes?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank
Hare
you
Krishna.
for the lecture. I do chant 10 rounds daily.
10 rounds.
Yeah.
And can you tell us anything about the details, how you do it, how you get yourself ready for it? What's it like to do that practice? That's a lot of rounds you're chanting. So how do you do that?
So get up early in the morning. I came from Bangalore. I'm new to the US. And this is
Welcome,
my first
welcome.
week in the US. So in Bangalore, we used to get up early in the morning. We have also established a small house-like facility where we meet and cook prasadam. But we meet there basically for chanting rounds. So we meet around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, whosoever comes late. By 6 to 8 we do. So previously we were doing 8 rounds. 8 rounds takes about 1 hour. And 1 hour we do group chanting, and then we do small arti for Gaurnitai. And then...
We means your family?
No, friends. All.
Your friends?
Yeah. Devotees.
So every day you get together with your friends and chant?
Yeah, every day. We used to, in Bangalore, so I left out now.
Okay,
Now
so that's a good suggestion, right? Can you tell us how you do the mantra? Just do one for us.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
And then you chant an individual mantra on each bead and go all the way around, right?
Oh, yeah, that way. So we start with that head mantra.
Yeah.
And we start the first pranam mantra. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunivadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavind Ki Jai. And then we start. And once we start with the... so there is a bead, there is a small thread in between the full circle. That thread is after your 8 rounds. That 8 beads, initial 8 beads are for the Sakhis. And so we have to take their permission first. So we start with those 8. And your first round should be starting from that 8. So when you start, you complete a circle and you will reach the 108th round bead. Then you have to turn the bead, and so that the head bead should not be crossed. You hold the head bead only at the initial point when you say this pranam mantra. And then once your chanting round starts, you start with the first one from those 8 beads, and then you complete the circle. Then again go reverse, then again go reverse, reverse. So like this way you keep on toggling. And the end you again say the pranam mantra and close your chanting.
And do you have to control the mind? Or is it easy for you? So
back in those days when we started, like it has been 2 years now, started with one mantra. So at that time we were focusing on our own sound. That's what was told to us. But nowadays it's a different feeling, cannot be simply expressed by saying what we do. So we get habituated. If we chant early in the morning, I've seen that there are disturbances. So sometimes we have tried to trick God by using that counter and putting that into our finger. While driving also we chant sometimes, but that's not effective. I've seen that in morning only whatever we do. In the morning what we do is more effective. So what I have felt is It becomes slightly serious when it is early in the morning and we are listening to the group. So sometimes when we take a break, at least somebody else's sound is going into my mind. So the concentration is on that sound.
Okay. This is very helpful. What is your name?
Om Shankar.
Om Shankar.
Yeah.
Let's thank Om Shankar for his advice. So, anyone can start a home practice. A few tips he gave, that if you have a friend or some friends you can get together with and chant your rounds, however, he started with 1, and then he's worked his way up to 10. And in the morning time, he suggested, it's very good. So everyone can start their home practice, and this is the mainstay of the practice of Krishna consciousness as given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You'll feel great effect for yourself just by doing this. Any other tips? Anybody else chanting at home that has something to add?
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Okay.
So, like in the morning, I chant like 8 rounds in the morning, like starting 5 o'clock in the morning. But then I cannot finish 16 rounds in the morning. So, when I restart it, like during the day, sometime whenever I get, I still have to do the head mantra again, like the whole. So between every round I have to do, or how does it? How
You means you stop halfway through the round?
No, I finish the rounds.
Yes.
But then I finish 8 rounds in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I have to do I do 16 rounds a day.
Yes.
So rest of the rounds, before I start the rest of the rounds, again I say the head mantra or,
Head mantra?
pranam mantra.
Yeah, so the way we do it, whenever we resume, whenever we get mingled into the activities and take a break from chanting, it's okay, it can be abrupt, but when we resume again, when we are in group, we do that pranam mantra. So even if we have done 7 rounds and only last round is remaining, and that last round I want to do at the night because there are some activities. So for that 1 round also I'll do pranam mantra. Yeah.
Every time you stop and then you start.
Yeah, when you take the beat back again, I mean when you take the beat again, you should do, because you start with those first 8 beats. So you have to say. Otherwise, but recently we have been practicing, we all got busy, so we are also using that electronic counter. So in that we don't know whether to do, but we also do there, pranam mantra.
I'm not aware of what is the electronic.
That there's a device actually which we have bought for our convenience. This is what the merchants use at shops to count some financial related things. But we put that into our finger and we just press the button. When you press one button, it increments. So that's also used as a shortcut when we don't have the beat bags.
Okay.
What is the preferred way, Prabhu?
Preferred way?
After every round, we should do a pranam mantra?
After every round? No, not necessary. Prabhupada did not do Sri Krishna Chaitanya between every round. He'd just go Hare Krishna mantra all the way through. Shruti Kirti Prabhu told us that it was not his practice. But there's no hard and fast rule. It's not, different people have slightly different ways of chanting. And also, there are different details according to who you're taking guidance from. There's never any harm from chanting spiritual mantras. But in general, it's not necessary. One begins respectfully chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, you can go all the way through. So, we're going to have an arti ceremony. As soon as the Pujari is ready, you can let me know. Pardon me? Everyone okay? Yes. Oh, good. All right, good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a Artik ceremony. We'll stand up and put all the asanas in the corner so we have plenty of room. And we'll sing the Artik. Thank you very much. Gaur Premanande Haribol.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari ar marman, nachari ar marman, hey, nachari ar marman, nachari ar marman, nachari ar marman, nachari ar marman.